we're going forward in time. We came from somewhere, we have a reason, and we're going somewhere, right? And so those questions, if you were on the boat and someone said to you, look, don't ask those questions. Those are illegitimate type questions. I don't want to hear those questions. What would you reply to them saying?
They've all the right to say that.
You have all the right.
Questions are fun, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you have all the right to say ask those questions, right?
All right.
So, here's my point. My point is these are almost innate questions that we have to ask by virtue of existential existence. So here's what I'm going to ask you, right? How would you answer those questions respective to the life in which we live? How did we get here? Why are we here? Where are we going? What are we doing here?
You know, people have written a lot of books about this, you know?
Yes.
They're asking me to answer that question right now.
Well, let's try and simplify things. I know lots of books have been written, but lots of books have been written on almost everything, right? On igneous and sedimentary rocks. On, you know, the point is this. Here's another question. Say we're walking in a speaker's corner, yeah, right here, and we see a nice floating ball. Okay, it's just a floating ball, and it's hovering. Okay, and me and you're walking, me and you have your skateboard there, and then you ask me, how did that ball get there? And I say you have three options. But we say that ball either was always there. Okay, that ball either was always there, right? That ball created itself, or there was something that created that ball. Which of those three options seem most reasonable to you?
I couldn't really pick an answer, you know.
Right.
To give you my perspective on things.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of religions, and I try to understand all of them, you know.
Yes.
And so there's various different answers to all of these questions, and I don't think any answer is sort of clear cut.
Okay.
And so I'm not necessarily sure what I answer in this hypothetical situation that you've just described, but
right. Well, let's
to pedal back to the questions you've asked me earlier. Is I personally believe wholeheartedly that the reason why we're here is just in essence, is to have fun.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a hedonistic way, you know. I mean a very bad example of just having fun would be the hedonism of the 60s revolution, you know, where you've just had people who just took drugs, drank a lot of alcohol, made love to everyone. I see that as a generation that didn't really understand the importance of responsibility, you know. And so I think that we are bound and limited, and we have all of these limitations and these rules that we have to adhere to go through life morally, you know, in a good way to cause the least disturbance and harm to all of our surroundings. But I think that in essence it's really the point of us to be here and have fun, you know.
I get what you're saying. I've heard what you said. Right. But let's go one step back before we ask the question, why are we here? The other question that I kind of asked you was, how do we get here?
Right.
I'll take your question on board in the next kind of segment, if you like, right? But here, how do we get here? Going back to the ball example, right? You have three possible logically disjunctive options. You have, in this logical disjunction, you have 1, 2, 3 options. Either the ball came as a result of self-creation, and we know self-creation is not possible because it means that something will have to exist and not exist at the same time, right? So like your mother giving birth to herself, is that something which is possible? No, because then that would mean that she has to exist and not exist at the same time. In the same way, right, the ball giving rise to itself is impossible because it's a contradiction in terms. It can't exist and not exist at the same time.
I've studied a lot of Eastern philosophy,
right?
And they offer another explanation for this, which is also something which is very interesting.
Okay.
Is I don't know the word in English, but there's these great myths of, say, the Egyptian religions where the ultimate God, in a sense, how the universe was created was by self-impregnation, and that's usually symbolically female God. And so I'm not sure where you are coming from. I'm just trying to understand all of these stories. You know?
Yeah, no. Those things are all there. It's not even an Eastern tradition. I mean, what do you call it? Gilgamesh and all.
Right. So the Eastern thing,
the Egyptian thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is I can't remember the name of the god, but I know it's what. Is it Ra? Is it Ra? Is it not? But it's one of those gods. I'm not an ancient Egyptian specialist. Impregnates the other one, and therefore you had the heaven and the earth. But there you still had the coexistence of two things at the same time.
Yeah.
Even in that myth. The point is, on logical principles, it's not possible to have something that exists and doesn't exist at the same time. You see what I mean? So if I say I exist but I don't exist, are you here? Or if I say, look, I'm going to send you a text message, all right? Bear. Or I'm going to tell you something. And you say, what's that, Mohammed? What are you going to tell me? I'm going to tell you, look, I'm not here. What do you say about that?
Objectively speaking, you are here.
Oh, right. So it's a contradiction in terms. You can't exist and not exist at the same time, right? We accept.
Yeah.
So that, now we have the disjunction, and we took out one option, which is that the ball can't create itself. Now we go to the other two options. Either the ball was there eternally, or it was created by some other thing.
Yes.
In either event, the question would be, does the ball depend upon something or not? Because both of those options are logically valid options. Either the ball was always there, or the ball was put into place by something else. But in either event, the ball would have to be either dependent upon itself or dependent upon something else for its continued existence. If you say that that ball is dependent upon something else because of its continued existence, then the question is, what is that other thing?
Well, so what you see a lot in Abrahamic religions is when the notion of the creation of the universe is essentially a sort of the universe conceptualized as God being some sort of mechanic or engineer, like. He created the universe. As soon as you create something, it's essentially an assembly of parts.
Right.
So something from the outside that puts it together.
Okay.
What I find very interesting in Eastern philosophy, say Taoism, which is what the Chinese people believe in. That's the yin yang symbol, right? They see the universe and the creation of the universe not necessarily as something that has been created, but something which grows. And so there's this dichotomy that you can make them between an organic take on the universe and a mechanic take on the universe. And so something that is constructed or something that grows of itself. And so a counter argument to what you're saying is could be, I'm not saying it is because I don't know, right? Is that the universe is actually maybe closer resembled by the symbology of say a flower. It's like you have a little seed. You're like, how is the seed going to do whatever? But it has the potential to rise.
So this is interesting because it's quite similar to what Richard Dawkins, although his book is not really.
I'm not a big fan.
I'm not a big fan of it. Look, I mean, of his book as well, it's got 300 pages or something. If you look at actually the arguments, it's probably about 20 or 30 pages. Yeah, the arguments against God's existence. But one of the things that he says is that the universe. Literally, he uses the term, it has bylaws. So the laws of the universe could be the bylaws of a conglomerate of universes, which are the multiverse, right? And that there are bigger universes. And what he says is, where it connects with what you're saying, is that he says that this universe or universes which survive, and he uses biological terminology here, evolutionary terminology. He says universes which survive are ultimately the ones which we get to know about and so on. So in other words, he anthropomorphizes the universe, right? Or you could say actually he personifies the universe in a sense, right? He personifies the universe in the sense that he gives it the characteristics of living things. So if the universe now, in order to be understood by people, has to be personified, that's a question. Why do we have to personify the universe? Now, if you think about it, number one, on naturalism, there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that non-living things, yes, have an ability to evolve, or that they have that kind of flower example that you gave, which, by the way, a flower is a living thing, right? So going back to biology, it has no propensity to develop in and of itself, or so on. But what's more interesting is that the naturalist has resorted, right, to using attributes of human being in order to make sense of the universe. And what strikes me about that is that those attributes of human being are also coextensive with the attributes of the Abrahamic God. For instance, the ability to grow something, the ability to develop something, the maintainer, the sustainer, and so on. So in other words, what the naturalist has to do is, in the case of Dawkins, or what the Eastern traditionists have to do, is that they have to give the universe the attributes of the God of Abraham, which obviously in this case is something that they kind of counter their theory on. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but I honestly do not believe you can reduce say Taoism down to naturalism.
No, Taoism, I'm not saying that's naturalism. I was talking about Dawkins. What I'm saying about that is that the universe is personified. It's given attributes which, from an Abrahamic religion perspective, belong to the attributes of God. Now, those attributes are seen as necessary in both Abrahamic religions and on Taoism, say, or Eastern traditions, in order for the universe to be explained.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So
that's
perfect.
That's the core essence of,
right? We accept.
of making things understandable.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we have to ask the question: why is it, in fact, that we have to refer to such attributes? Right? So why do we have to refer to the maintenance of the universe? Why do we have to explain the universe in conjunction with maintenance, sustenance, development, and so on? And how can we do so without ascribing the ability of the universe to do those things with an entity that's transcendent or extraneous to that universe, which is able to endow the universe with such ability to be maintained and sustained and so on? So in other words, what is it about these attributes of maintaining and sustenance and development which are particularly important, right, in understanding the cosmos? I would answer by saying that you cannot understand the cosmos unless you understood that the universe itself, yes, that the universe itself is being developed or sustained or maintained or any of those things, or has laws, for instance, right?
Yeah.
But the question is, what is the most convincing explanation to why the universe has those attributes, either imposed upon it through being supervened on it,
or it was inherent in it as
in
potential.
It. Absolutely. So that's my question.
The ball thing.
Yeah. Is it making you think a little bit?
Sorry?
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm following you. Yeah, sure.
Right. So you've got the thesis is this. The Abrahamic thesis, if you like, with the exception of Christianity, because obviously triune God and Trinitarianism and all that stuff. The thesis is that the universe was caused by a simple agent. The universe was caused by a simple agent. That it wasn't a modicum or a plethora or a multiplicity of agents, but it was just one cause.
Oh, hey, that's not. That's why I didn't get the connotation with Dawkins. Like the thing I said about Eastern philosophy, I didn't see the connection with Dawkins. And so when it comes to Dawkins,
both of them talked about biology, right?
And all that stuff, I'm very skeptical. I'm very skeptical.
Yeah.
I believe that not only the idea of a multiverse is a plausible idea scientifically speaking, but I think that most of the atheistic types that are die-hard convinced that there's no creator or whatever.
Yes. So, to bring this back, the question is, do you accept the premise that every originated thing has an originator?
It's either from an originator or it has the potential from within itself. Yeah.
Right, so every originated thing, by definition, because it's been originated, must have an originator.
Yeah.
Okay, the universe is an originated thing. Right, therefore the universe has an originator.
Yeah.
Alright, now let's go back to our qualities of the universe that you talked about: maintaining, sustaining, development, all that stuff. Is it fair to say that the qualities of that originator could be summarized as at least the ability to sustain, maintain, to put laws in place and so on for the universe?
I'm skeptical of laws, really.
Okay.
I think that laws...
Let's take the laws out for
laws, in a sense, are sort of...
But the ability to maintain, sustain the universe.
What do you mean by that? You think that there's
So, with the non-existence of the originator, the originated would not exist.
Yeah.
Yes?
One more time, sorry.
If the originator doesn't exist, then the originated can't exist.
I'm not sure.
Well, if everything, go back to what we said, everything that has an originator, that is originated, has an originator. The universe has an originator, therefore the universe is originated, therefore the universe has an originator, right?
Yeah.
So if the originator isn't there, then the originated cannot be there.
But, so, like, where I feel you are coming from is from a very Abrahamic perspective. And so, say I would have been Chinese or Japanese and grew up from that culture, I'd have a completely different answer. I do feel I have a completely different answer because I've studied these cultures.
Yes.
But right now, I feel so interested by all these situations and stories and explanations that are all there, that in a sense, I understand where both parties, in a sense, if I...
But what I'm saying to you is that despite that being the case, because that could be the genetic fallacy, right? Depending on where the thing comes from, it might be right or wrong.
Yeah, well, all right. But so let me give you the entire elaborate story of the... what the question boils down to is, how can something come from nothing?
Can something come from nothing?
Exactly. And so what's funny, what I find fascinating about Eastern countries and Eastern religion is that they have a completely different take on emptiness and space. Like if you go to Japan, like their rooms, they're often not so bulky. There's not much stuff. Everything you can just fold up so you can like create space. They have a very different take on nothingness.
Okay.
Buddhism, which also I find very interesting, very fascinating. Study that as well. A lot of doctrines are on emptiness, and I actually do feel you can like make connotations with that within Abrahamic religions, where they say like you have to empty your heart and all that stuff before you can like get filled up by the grace of God or whatever. So the Eastern religion take of the originating of the universe actually delves into the...
when you say Eastern, what are you talking about? Buddhism or which
specifically, I've been mainly interested in Zen Buddhism, which is like, we could reduce it down to Buddhism.
Okay.
And so they have a different take on nothingness. And so I feel that in the West there's this sort of bias we have, which I also that sort of that things are more important, like that things are more important than not having stuff, in a sense. You know, that's why I also feel we are very materialistic and all that stuff.
Yes.
And so we have also this big bias, which I see in the scientific community, is that everything that's real to us has to be measured. Like as soon as you can measure it, it's real. And then a question I like to say, ask Dawkins is like, all right, you go to sleep, you dream you're being on that big boat. Is that real? That experience you'll have,
right?
And he'll wake up and he'll say, no, I'm going to be objective about it. And I had this dream and it was just all subjective experience.
Right.
What I just experienced is totally subjective and it was not real. And I would say to him, right, but then what was the experience you had? Because clearly you can remember what you have had.
Right.
So basically you have this view of reality where as soon as I introduce even the concept of dreams, you don't know what to do with it. And so I personally feel that we need sort of an expansion of what we take in to be, what we might consider to be real or not.
Right.
In order to sort of get more sense of stuff.
I agree with you, right? I totally agree with that point. So just to summarize what you're saying is that on naturalism, the first person's subjective experience, especially of things like dreams and so on, cannot really be explained.
Science doesn't understand subjective experience.
Yes,
it can't deal with it.
It can't deal with it.
It can't measure it, so it tries to shove it under the carpet.
Yes. I totally agree with you there. Right. Now, going back to what I was saying, because there's a point of agreement. The point you were making about the Eastern traditions, Zen Buddhism, and so on, and space.
Yeah.
Because this was the broader question of can something come from nothing?
Right.
So, from my reading, I mean, I tried to look at the Eastern traditions myself to see where explicitly there is mention of what we call like the philosophy of religion. In the philosophy of religion, things like the creation of the universe and so on. And there is mention, of course, of, in for example, the Vedas and other books of how the universe came into being, right? But the question of an explicit philosophical inquiry onto whether there can be a creation from nothing wasn't really dealt with in the same way, for example, as the Hellenistic Greeks dealt with it. So when I looked into the works of, for example, Aristotle and Plato, obviously he wrote books called The Physics and the Metaphysics, where he deals specifically with these kinds of things. Aristotle, he wrote 2 books on these kind of things. The Metaphysics, he actually deals specifically with the question of a vacuum. And his elaboration on that topic is quite interesting because it feeds its way all the way through to Leibniz and the discussion that he had with Newton about space being relative or not being relative. So it kind of feeds itself into a physics discourse. But his idea, Aristotle's idea, was that it's not possible for there to be an empty vacuum. There's no such thing as a vacuum, a nothing space. Now, this idea kind of, throughout the medieval period, I would say, with a large degree, and I'm obviously here talking about more the Middle Eastern traditions and the Christian and Jewish traditions. Obviously, that's where my area is more, where I'm more interested. In those traditions, the logical disjuncture that we talked about in the beginning of how the universe came into existence, it never included nothing created nothing. Right? It was not respected by those individuals. Even up until Leibniz, it was not respected. I could say even. Sorry, I'm not saying. I'm not cut you off. Even until this day, it's not respected. I mean, the only people who really postulate here, people like this guy Krauss and other people, are those individuals who really are using semantical deception in order to try and put forward a theory which talks about black holes, which themselves are governed by laws of physics and can't be said to be emptiness or nothingness, in the sense that it's the absence of something, because that's the definition of nothing. It's the absence of something.
The reason
or the equivalent of the mathematical zero.
The reason why I brought up dreams, because I don't feel that I tied it back to the ultimate creation question that we were dealing with.
Right.
Like we had an agreement about whether dreams are real and this.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I've remembered now why I brought it up, and I haven't fully explained it. And so my estimation is that we probably have a different take on the meaning of nothing. And so what I feel happens in Abrahamic culture or Abrahamic religion, and now I'm not going to call it Western culture, but I feel that the word nothing is very interesting. So imagine Dawkins dreaming and you confronting him the next morning, like, what did you experience?
Yes.
because he can't deal with subjective experience as a scientist.
Right.
He'll shove it under the cart,
Right.
and he'll say, "Oh, that's nothing."
Right.
And then I'll come back to him and
Right,
say,
right.
"No, you experienced something."
I see your point. Yes, yes.
You did experience something.
Yes,
and so then what was it? And I
Yes.
said, "No, it's nothing."
Yes.
And so what I would like to put forward then is that
Yes.
the way we use the word "nothing"
Yes.
often can be translated to
Yes.
"No, it's unimportant."
Right.
And so
yes,
I see
Yes.
I see Abrahamic religion
Yes.
as a sort of
Yes.
filter where we have a very rigid conceptualization
Of nothing.
of what's real and what's not, and
Right.
everything that's pushed that's outside of this bracket, we just don't look.
Right.
Even though we do know
with-
that it's part of the human experience.
With respect,
And so,
there would be one objection I have with that, right?
Could I
of course,
can I finish the story
yeah,
though?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So, in the Eastern religion, they believe in this duality of the yin yang, basically. You
Right.
know, male and female, etc.
Right.
And so, their take on stuff is that in order for there to be something, there has to be nothing. And so, I'm not articulate enough to explain
you are articulate.
all the philosophical underpinnings.
No,
but
I get what you mean.
They're like Eastern philosophers. They make a very strong case for this, and it's very fascinating.
All right.
Where they say it's not so much how did something arise out of nothing,
Okay.
but something and nothing arise mutually. Where did that come from? They believe
Something and nothing.
Yes, and so my definition of nothing would be that all things considered, like in the same way that if you look at an empty room, and because I said we use the word nothing strange, and I think that we can often translate it to it's unimportant, or maybe even more precisely that which we do not acknowledge to be part of reality, in a sense. It's like if you bring someone to an empty room, it's like, what's in this room? Well, nothing. And I could say that,
Okay,
no,
explain.
there's
All right.
empty space.
Now let me explain to you. I think there might be a confusion, right? You said that something and nothing have, according to the Eastern
Yes.
traditions. And by the way, we should kind of disentangle the Eastern traditions, because Sikhism is an Eastern tradition. And by the way, it's quite monotheistic.
What's
Sikhism? Sikhism is
is that a branch of
it's
Hinduism or Islam?
No. It's a standalone religion.
Right, I don't know that.
Yeah. So
Like I remember the name.
and
but
they
I don't
believe
know
that the universe began with ik, with this this ex nihilo creation from God and all that.
Yeah.
So that's an Eastern tradition. And by the way, you could even interpret the Hindu traditions as believing in the same thing, Brahman and so on, starting the universe or whatever it may be. Yep. Now, or creating the universe from timber or whatever the Vedas say. Now, what I'm saying is this: is that the postulation that something and nothing can arise mutually is problematic, because if you mean something and nothing in an absolute sense, that would entail a contradiction. Because if you,
I understand
do
a
you
lot.
get it?
Right.
Because let me explain. Sorry, because nothing by definition is the absence of something, so they can't arise mutually. If one has arisen, the other one
That's where I
must
disagree.
depart.
I think we have to
Go
get
on.
more sophisticated about nothing. And so if I bring a regular person into an empty room and I'll say what's in this room,
Yeah.
they'll say nothing. And I'll say, all right, but what do you mean by nothing? What does a nothing mean? Because clearly, for the same reason that when Dawkins wakes up, he hasn't, and he has actually dreamt. He hasn't experienced pure nothing.
No, I get it.
He has actually experienced.
No, I
something.
appreciate
so
that.
In terms of the room, there's an empty room.
Right.
Well, we say it's nothing,
Yes.
but there is sort of space.
But this
and
is
so,
a-
in terms of the
yeah.
creation thing, I believe that whenever I say something and nothing arise mutually,
Yeah.
I believe that something is actually. I believe that nothing is actually a thing. It's not necessarily material.
Let me say to you one more time.
It's a potential.
Something. So nothing is a thing.
Yes.
So in that case,
basically, roughly speaking.
Let me fine. In that case, let's redefine what nothing is. Right?
Yeah.
You're using these, I would say, equivocations, because when we open the door.
Equivocations?
Yeah. So
What's my English is not good enough.
Right. So the fallacy of equivocation is when you use a word in two different contexts, which means two different things, but you're equating them together.
No.
So
now
let me
I'm trying
explain.
to propose
Let me
a new
explain.
definition.
So, for example, if in the field of if I go to a hospital and I say, can I speak to a doctor, please? Yeah. And there's someone who's a historian with a PhD stands up and says, yeah, okay, I'll speak to you right now. Say, look, I was talking about the medical doctor, not not the historian. So you have to differentiate between that which we say and that which we mean. Because you can use the same word, homonyms and homographs and whatever in English language, which are written in the same way and sound the same, but they mean two different things completely. So if you open a room and you say, okay, that's nothing, that's in our vernacular, that's in our common speech. When we open
I understand
but
what
when we say philosophically or mathematically or logically, the idea of nothing is an absence of something. So in mathematics, nothing is zero, is represented by that particular symbol, right? And that's why there are so many problems in mathematics with zero. Divide 0 by 0, what's the answer?
0.
Some say 0, some say 1.
Yeah.
And some say infinity, right? There's a difference of opinion. You see, now that's the problem. Now when you have a conceptual thing introduced into mathematics, you get more than one answer, it's undefined. If you get infinity and try and divide it at times, it's going to be problematic. There's a tendency towards infinity and so on. Mathematicians have struggled and grappled with those concepts. Now what I'm saying to you is, if we look at the idea of nothing as an absence of something, I'm just using that word. If nothing means, it's conditional here, an absence of something, is it conceivable, possible, fathomable?
No, in that sense, no. Totally
that
no.
Something can come from that.
Nothing, no.
So that's perfect.
No.
In that case, this understanding that the universe is self-originated or originated from nothing is an understanding that can't be logically substantiated with any kind of evidence, cosmological or ontological, right? In the mind or in the scientific world.
Can I tie this heavenly stuff to the earth? Because that's what I find fascinating.
Okay.
It's like to talk about cosmology and bring it right back to all of these people and you and me.
Yes.
So I think that if you'd have to bring this, what I see, the argument that we're having in this cosmological stuff, if I'd have to bring it down to like direct discourse, I believe that a similar question, like on the same frequency, would be, can the universe be explained? Because that's what I feel is that we're basically arguing. Whereas in a sense, if I'd have to compare it to, where I'm sort of advocating for the nothing side, you're saying no, that's sort of impossible. And if I'd have to bring that back to this discourse that we're having right now and tie it just to philosophy.
But you've just agreed with me, just to be clear. You've agreed with me that the universe, with that definition of nothing...
From your system of thinking, yes.
Yes,
yeah,
from those definitions, cannot be created from nothing, or cannot be originated from nothing. So going back to what I was saying, if I say to you then, that every originated thing has an originator, the universe is an originated thing, therefore the universe has an originator, that originator, by virtue of logical necessity, cannot be nothing.
Right. So
accepted.
So the question, what I would,
from my understanding
that's
so
coherent.
what is that?
Yeah.
What is the originator of the universe then? Yeah. What must the originator of the universe? What characteristics? What attributes must it have?
And what's the originator of the universe?
We'll come to that. But let's answer one question at a time. You can come and stand next to him.
Can I flip it back to you?
Yes.
Can I flip it back to you?
But can you answer that question first? Then ask me whatever you want to ask.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Right.
No.
So here the point.
What's your take?
My take is, if we went with his question, what's the originator of the universe?
Yeah.
You do have an infinite regress, obviously, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
it doesn't get anywhere.
The answer would be that you'd have to require a pre-eternal, right, agency in order for, that system to start. Now, obviously, someone could turn around and say, but, you know what, I believe in the infinite regress. Wait a minute now. You might say that. Do you believe in the infinite regress?
It's a possibility.
Possibility, fine. No, I'm gonna, for the sake of argument, for me, by the way, I say it's not a possibility. My official position
I agree.
is that it's not a possibility. And the reason why I would say it, just like John Phenopoulos said, he said that it's not possible for an infinity to get greater, right? So for example, now in the universe, are we moving forward in time?
Yeah, but
We are. So if there was an infinite regress, either in time, movement, or bodies, that systematically in a linear way come one after the other, then the coming new or the origination of new time movement or bodies would mean that the infinity that we have would have to get bigger, and infinity as a mathematical kind of concept cannot be susceptible to addition
Add-on. It's already infinite.
Because that would be
exactly
right.
I understand.
But for the sake of argument, right? Okay, I like to take every argument on board. Even if we say that the universe has there's an infinite amount of bodies or time or whatever, even though that's a logical impossibility in my view, and in Aristotle's view, and in Aquinas' view, and in Maimonides' view, and in Ghazali's view, the list goes on, almost in everyone's view, in fact. All of those individuals say that, even though I could just argue, but the ultimate cause of that infinite regress is coextensive with the infinite regress. So in other words, where the infinite regress is there, also the ultimate cause is there.
Yeah, it cancels
right.
each other.
So in other words, it doesn't matter. Even if we go down that route, it doesn't actually solve anything. So the point I'm making is, if an infinite regress is impossible or possible, you still have the idea of a cause, an ultimate cause, right?
So
finite
things cannot coexist with infinity. Is that what you're saying?
Pardon me?
Finite things cannot coexist with infinity. They cannot exist inside of infinity because infinity is infinite. Every single small shadow of infinity is infinite. Is that what
Is
you
that
mean?
from a cosmological perspective or a mathematical perspective?
Both.
Well, no, they're two separate questions, right?
Well, infinity itself cannot be truly perceived by humans. Come here, don't run away. He's gone.
Go
he's
ahead,
gone.
sorry. Do you mind him coming
Infinity
in?
by itself
Yeah.
cannot be quite
I do
perceived
like
by
to ask you a
humans.
question later.
Cannot
Okay.
be
Sure,
quite
have a
perceived by
conversation.
humans because we are finite beings.
Okay.
So by your logic, infinity is impossible. It's impossible that there's an infinite regression.
I said, just to
Okay,
be,
then it's impossible that
no,
there's an infinite regression. Is that what you said?
Just to be clear, what I said was that in the case where there is an infinite regress or there isn't an infinite regress, in either case, this doesn't. I would say in the case that there isn't, then you can say, well, you need a pre-eternal ultimate cause.
There's
right?
an exception to
If
the
you say
infinite
there is an
regress.
ultimate regress, I'll say no problem. For the sake of argument, let's go with that. Let's say that there was an eternality of objects' movement on time before the universe, but I'll say that that does not cancel out the idea that there is a coextensive ultimate cause. So even if you have your ultimate regress, I don't care. If you really believe in infinity, I don't care. You can believe in infinity, believe in it before the universe, but I'll say what caused that infinity, even if you believe in it. So I haven't got a problem.
questions.
I haven't got a problem
Just
either way.
Two questions, and basically that's it.
Yeah.
First of all, is God infinite?
In what? Because infinite, let me tell you the word infinite. Infinite does not make sense as a word by itself. It's like saying the word, is God zero? Zero in what? Zero in injustice? Absolutely, right?
That God doesn't exist.
No. So if you say, no, that's not how it works. Infinity,
That's not how it works.
infinity has to be, you have to add the word infinity with some kind of subject or object. So you have to say, does he have infinite
This
wasn't
mercy?
the question I
Yeah,
wanted to ask.
infinite
It's
time.
infinite.
No, infinite in and of
It's
itself.
something infinite.
Infinite in and of itself must be contextualized with either time, bodies, movement, or something. Otherwise, we're talking about an abstraction, which actually, to most mathematicians, doesn't mean much, right?
Well, even in time, body, even if you try to make it more concise, more concrete, it's still infinity. It still cannot be perceived by humans. It's still exactly the
So
same.
your
You're not changing
question, is
anything.
God infinite, is not a complete question. Is he infinite in what? What are you
Is
asking
he
exactly?
infinite in knowledge? for
Yes,
example?
yeah. So
Yes.
he has all knowledge. Yes.
Yes. So does God know what it means to be evil?
He knows what it means to be evil. Yes.
So he was evil.
You don't have to. That's a. It's
He
like
experienced being
Right.
evil.
No. God is
Does
not
God
susceptible.
know the experience of being evil?
All right. So here's what I would say to you. Right. The susceptibility of experience, as known by human beings, is not the same as for God. So, for example, for us, right, human beings, someone will say, human beings, I can steal. Yes.
Yes.
Does God have the experience of being a thief? No, because God, number one, owns everything. So it's impossible for him to be a thief. So in other words, having the experience of something is not necessarily having the knowledge of it.
But by not having that limit that humans have, God doesn't have the exact knowledge that humans have with that limit. God doesn't
That's
have
a